Why didn't Gwyneth Paltrow settle? I think that's the question we were all asking ourselves the last 2 weeks as we watched this trial, riveted by what was playing out on a national, if not international stage. So for those of you who don't know what happened, let me catch you up. So Gwyneth Paltrow was sued by a man named Terry Sanderson in 2019 for a ski accident that happened in Deer Valley in 2016. So Terry Sanderson claimed he was skiing along and bam! He was struck in the back after hearing the scream like King Kong coming at him, and he went flying.
I'm flying. I'm absolutely flying.
He suffered 4 broken ribs and severe brain injury that has plagued him and robbed him of being able to enjoy his life the last 7 years. Now, this really came down to a case of he said, she said.
Until I was hit.
He struck me in the back.
There's no video footage, but there's a big question mark. And the Deer Valley employees seemed to side with Gwyneth Paltrow's side of the story, but nobody seemed to have witnessed this collision except for one man by the name of Craig Ramone, who was Terry Sanderson's sort of friend, right? He was part of this meetup group that skied together that day. So back in 2019, Terry Sanderson tried to sue Gwyneth Paltrow for $3.1 million on the premise that this was a hit and run, that she hit him and then she left, right? That she bolted off the scene without leaving her name and information. But as we saw through the trial, that's not true. The ski instructor, Eric Christensen, was there and had her information. So the judge actually dismissed that part of the lawsuit and only allowed the negligence part of the case to stay. And this was worth $300,000. That's what Terry Anderson was asking for. Oh my God, these opening statements were just so cringe-worthy because they were so bad, and everybody on Twitter and on different live streams were saying, who are these attorneys and why are they so terrible? And we all have to remember these are civil attorneys. They're not criminal attorneys, right? They probably don't go to trial that often because, as I've mentioned before, cases settle about 95% of the time, right? So I will play some of the opening statements for you, but they're bad.
Oh, well, let's try this. Gwyneth Paltrow knew that looking up the mountain and to the side while skiing down the mountain was dangerous.
But that's not why you're here. You're here to figure out if someone negligently crashed into someone or if no one did.
And so in the opening statements, Terry Sanderson's attorneys asked for $3.2 million in damages that are non-economic because he has already retired. They're not claiming that this is from lost wages. This is basically for pain and suffering and loss of enjoyment of his life. So through the 8 days, plaintiffs presented their case with their experts. Then Terry Sanderson testified, and his testimony was just all over the place. And Craig Ramone, the eyewitness, didn't come off that credible.
She just slammed him very hard.
And then came Gwyneth Paltrow's experts, and there was this doctor, Dr. Shearer, who was a biomechanic engineer who was amazing. I mean, he did these drawings and he just blew everybody out of the water. He was a snow sport expert, and he really explained how the way the collision happened, there's no way Terry Sanderson could have flown because his boots or his skis would have flown off. He would have probably suffered injury in his lower, crotch area, which he didn't. And through it all, Gwyneth Paltrow was a very credible witness. She never wavered from her story.
2 skis came between my skis, forcing my legs apart.
And I believe that people who are telling the truth don't waver from that story because that's the truth, right? People who lie or who might not remember the story, and this is what I really believe about Terry Sanderson. I believe he didn't remember what happened. Craig Ramone kind of filled in his memories.
She took her plane out of Million Airport. Gwyneth took out Terry and just took off. Is that what you typed that the week after the crash?
Yes, it is.
Because he claims that he was out cold for 2 to 5 to 8 to 10 minutes. I mean, his story has changed through different doctors and different doctors' visits. And by the way, Deer Valley is a very buttoned up, luxurious resort. If there was somebody laying on the ground for 2 to 5 minutes, believe me, an ambulance would have been called, right? Do you know how long 2 minutes is? I mean, I won't do it, but it's a long time. So did Craig Ramone just really stand there and watch his buddy, Terry Sanderson, lay unconscious for 2 minutes and he didn't check his pulse? It just just so many of it seems implausible. But I believe what really swayed the jury's mind, and there is a juror who was a nurse who has spoken out, and she stated that on the last day of defense's case, the attorney, Owens, who is so annoying but very effective, showed, I think, 50 photos of Terry Sanderson's Facebook page, his own postings, right?
Wow, I need to make some more money so I can go travel this way.
All these trips that he's been on in the last 7 years. He's climbed Machu Picchu. He has gone to Switzerland, Netherlands maybe 4 times. He's gone to Thailand. He's scuba dived 4 times. I mean, that is really very hard to believe with somebody who has severe brain injury could be doing all these different activities. Air flights, especially to Asia, is very long, and people who have brain injury have a hard time traveling. So for the jury, it just, his story about the fact that he's been sitting at home without any of the relationships and friendships that he's had anymore, basically staring at the wall, was really inconsistent with all these photos that he posted on Facebook of all of these many travel trips that he's had in the last 7 years. I have to tell you, when I was seeing that testimony, I was thinking to myself, wow, I lead a very boring life, and I work in Hollywood. Here's a man who stated that his life has been ruined and that the Terry Sanderson of before has been left on ski slopes.
He never returned home that night as the same Terry. He never came home.
And his life will never be the same. But there was a lot of testimony that seemed to indicate that here was a man with a lot of pre-existing medical conditions. He suffered a stroke. He lost eyesight in his right eye, which is probably why he didn't see Gwyneth Paltrow when he ran into her. He was asked if he was blind. He says, oh, I used that word loosely. He was an optometrist.
You told 3 of your providers at the VA, I'm blind in my right eye.
I use the word loosely.
And you're an optometrist.
So there were just things about him that weren't very believable. There was a fact that he was drinking a lot after the accident, and one of the doctors said, you know, people who suffer brain injury and concussions can't really drink because the drinking makes them feel worse, and they're not able to tolerate a lot of alcohol because their tolerance goes down.
Most people do not enjoy drinking alcohol when they're concussed.
So one after another, things just made Terry Sanderson not seem credible. And I have to say, I'm really impressed by Gwyneth Paltrow for holding her position and not settling, right? Because she could have settled to make this go away. She was the one who sat there day in and day out for 8 days. Terry Sanderson was not there for most of the trial. And his attorneys explained it by saying, oh, well, you know, he can't handle criticism. He can't hear from his daughter saying that he's different than he was before. But there was a lot of evidence that he was kind of an angry, impatient man even before the accident. And how about all the times when the doctors were testifying? Why wasn't he there? You know, when he was there when Gwyneth Paltrow was testifying. He had this very weird, creepy obsession with her. And his daughter, Polly, even said that if she could go back in time and tell her dad to not file this case, she would tell him that. And his other daughter, Shay, said that she didn't think $3 million was a fair request of damages in this case. And there was his daughter, Jenny, who he has not talked to for 13 years, who didn't come testify because I think her testimony would have been very damaging. Remember, Gwyneth Paltrow was one of the victims of Harvey Weinstein. There's even a story of Brad Pitt going up to Harvey Weinstein and basically cussing him out and trying to protect his girlfriend, Gwyneth Paltrow, at the time. She might have been silenced in the past, but she is no longer silent now. And I'm really proud of her because as a woman executive in Hollywood who has been silenced, good for you, Gwyneth, for saying, no, this would have compromised my integrity. I am going to sit in this trial day in and day out and prove that I was not a person who would leave an old man injured and just leave. And remember, her story stayed the same. She was pissed, right? She was pissed that somebody ran into her. At first, she felt like it was an assault.
And said, you skied directly into my effing back at the top of your lungs.
Yes, I did.
Remember, she is one of the highest level actors in Hollywood. She won an Oscar for Shakespeare in Love. She has dealt with a stalker for over 10 years. She had to testify against him in 2017. And so she, at first, thought she was being assaulted, and she did scream at him. And I think that's consistent with a real story, right? Of course you would get mad if somebody plows you down and hurts you and hurts your knees. This was the first trip that she took with her boyfriend, Brad Falchuk, at the time. It was the first time that their children came together. It was a very special day, and she was robbed of this day, right? It's not the cost of the ski instructors or the ski lifts. It was a cost to her new relationship with her boyfriend, who is now her husband. So I'm really proud of Gwyneth for holding her position and saying, no, I did nothing wrong. And here is a man who's trying to shake me down and portray me as someone who would just walk off after injuring an old man. So I always want to highlight strong women in our world, and Gwyneth Paltrow is one of those women, a woman in Hollywood who is no longer going to be silent. Maybe one day I'll be brave enough to tell my story. This is Tyler, the Hollywood attorney. I will see you guys soon. Remember, we were born perfect and we forget, and we are more powerful than realize, and Gwyneth Paltrow just reminded us of that. So thank you, Gwyneth. Bye.